Hello friends. So this month's theme is feminist horror erotica. And we are doing a deep dive into The Bloody Chamber by Angela Carter. Before we get started, I just want to say thank you so much for all of your support over the last 2 weeks, because we are trying to hit a fundraising goal this year, and we would love your help in doing that. As always, this video does contain spoilers for the text in question. Some of these stories were previously published in magazines, but they were compiled and published together in this one book. And I will warn you now that this book is not for the faint of heart. In reality, early on when the lover says to the girl, "Tell me another of those marvelous stories of yours." However, Carter puts her own unique twist on each of them, making them much darker and more violent. Her father makes this deal with the Marquis de Carabas, who is also the main antagonist of the story. The man had previously been a womanizer and had treated women very poorly, so the witch cursed him to live as a tiger for 7 years. The only way to break the curse was to find a woman who would love him for who he was, not for his looks or status. The beast thought that this woman was the girl who came to marry him, but he was wrong. However, this version is much darker and more violent. The story follows a young girl who is on her way to deliver food to her grandmother, when she is attacked and killed by a werewolf. The girl's mother is then told of her death, and she sets out to find the werewolf responsible. The story ends tragically when the girl tries to escape the beast and accidentally kills him. The story ends with the mother transforming into a werewolf and joining the pack. She is then forced to live out the remainder of his curse, which means that she becomes a tiger herself. The story ends with the stepsisters being taken to the palace and the girl left alone with her wolf. The girl is initially very unhappy in her new situation, but she eventually finds love with one of the other prostitutes. But again, with a much darker and more violent twist. He wakes her up with a kiss and they fall in love. However, the girl soon realizes that she does not love the prince, and that she only married him to escape her curse. The girl's mother, who had been searching for her daughter, finds them together and is furious with the prince. She curses him to become a lion and demands that he live in the forest for 7 years. The only way to break the curse is to find a woman who loves him for who he is, not for his looks or status. The mother then takes her daughter home and they live happily ever after. However, this version is also much darker and more violent. The writing is beautiful and the stories are truly terrifying. Just be warned, once you open this book, you can't put it down. The story follows a young woman who is cursed by a witch to die on her 18th birthday. The curse can only be broken if she is pricked by the spindle of a spinning wheel before midnight on her 16th birthday. The girl's mother does everything she can to protect her daughter from the curse, but on her 16th birthday, the girl sneaks out of the house and goes to a spinning wheel. She is immediately cursed and falls into a deep sleep. The story follows a young woman who is promised to an unknown beast in marriage. Her father makes this deal with the Marquis de Carabas, who is also the main antagonist of the story. The Marquis is grooming his daughter for a life of prostitution, and he intends to marry her off to the beast so that she can carry on his bloodline. The story follows the young woman's journey as she goes to live with the beast and tries to make the best of her situation. However, things quickly take a turn for the worse when she realizes that the beast is actually a man who has been cursed by a witch. The man had previously been a womanizer and had treated women very poorly, so the witch cursed him to live as a tiger for 7 years. The only way to break the curse was to find a woman who would love him for who he was, not for his looks or status. The beast thought that this woman was the girl who came to marry him, but he was wrong. The story ends tragically when the girl tries to escape the beast and accidentally kills him. She is then forced to live out the remainder of his curse, which means that she becomes a tiger herself. The girl and her lover plan to escape the brothel together, but their plans are thwarted when the girl's father comes to visit. They force the girl to stay home and take care of the house while they go to the ball. The girl's wolf becomes jealous of her stepsisters and sneaks them out of the house so that they can go to the ball. At the ball, the stepsisters meet the prince, and he falls in love with one of them. The stepsisters are so caught up in their own vanity that they don't realize that the prince is in love with the other. He is horrified to find out that his daughter is a prostitute and he takes her back home. The Marquis is grooming his daughter for a life of prostitution and he intends to marry her off to the beast so that she can carry on his bloodline. The story follows the young woman's journey as she goes to live with the beast and tries to make the best of her situation. However, this version is also much darker and more violent. The story follows a young girl who is forced to live with her evil stepmother and stepsisters after her father dies. The girl's only solace is her pet wolf, which she talks to every night. In fact, I would say that this book is definitely not for children. There is graphic sexual violence in every story and the language used is very adult. It follows a young girl who is raised by wolves after her mother dies, giving birth to her. One night, the girl's husband comes to her in a dream and tells her that she must choose between him and the wolves. The girl chooses the wolves and is transformed into a wolf herself. She then leads a pack of wolves into the village and attacks the people who had captured her. The story ends with the girl wolf running away into the forest and the villagers blaming the husband for what happened. The girl grows up knowing nothing about human society and lives happily with the wolves until one day when she is discovered by a hunter. The hunter brings the girl back to human society, and she is eventually married off to a man. And she replies, "No, I have done with marvelous stories, but I am going to live one." Throughout the book, there are subtle reminders that these stories are just that, stories. But as the book progresses, these reminders become less frequent, which shows the reader that the girl is losing herself in these stories. She is literally becoming the characters that she is reading about. These stories are dark and disturbing, and they definitely give off some serious sexual trauma vibes. If you would like to avoid spoilers, please leave now. But if you don't mind, then let's get right into it. So, yeah, thank you again. You guys are the best. It means the world to me that you've been sharing these videos with your friends and loved ones and talking about them online. It has been amazing. And the whole book is framed as a young girl reading these stories to her lover. This framing device is actually very important because it allows the reader to see the development of this relationship throughout the course of the book. At first, the girl reads the stories for her lover, but as the book goes on, the stories start bleeding into reality. And by the end of the collection, she is living them. We're getting a lot of new followers from our collaborations, and it's just really exciting. So thank you so much for being excited about what we're doing. It means the world to us. And if you'd like to support us even more, please do consider supporting us through donations. But without further ado, let's get right into today's video. For those of you who don't know, The Bloody Chamber was published in 1979, and it's a collection of feminist fairy tales. There are 7 stories in this collection, and they can be read individually or as a whole. The title story, The Bloody Chamber, sets up this blurring of fantasy. The stories themselves are all based on well-known fairy tales like Little Red Riding Hood, Cinderella, Snow White, and Beauty and the Beast. In The Tiger's Bride, the main character is a young woman who is promised to an unknown beast in marriage. However, things quickly take a turn for the worse when she realizes that the beast is actually a man who has been cursed by a witch. The second story in the collection, The Company of Wolves, is one of my favorites. However, the girl never forgets her time with the wolves, and she often dreams of them. The third story in the collection, The Werewolf, is a retelling of the classic Little Red Riding Hood fairy tale. The mother eventually tracks the werewolf down and kills him, but not before she is bitten and infected with lycanthropy herself. The fourth story in the collection, The Lady of the House of Love, is the story of a young woman who is sold by her father to a brothel. The story ends with the girl realizing that she will never be able to escape her past, and that she is destined to live a life of prostitution. The fifth story in the collection, Wolfulus, is another retelling of a classic fairy tale, this time Cinderella. One day, the king announces that there will be a ball at the palace, and the stepsisters are invited. After the ball, the stepsisters try to hide from the prince, but he eventually finds them and forces them to marry him. The sixth story in the collection, The Tiger's Bride, is a retelling of Beauty and the Beast. The seventh and final story in the collection, The Courtship of Mr. Lion, is a retelling of Sleeping Beauty. A prince finds the girl and is immediately smitten with her. Overall, I would highly recommend this book to anyone who likes their fairy tales with a side of darkness and sexual violence.